Perfectionism. It's such a simple idea. The idea that anything in life can be perfected in almost any given field. And here's the thing. I myself am a perfectionist, a type 1 Enneagram. And for those of you who don't know, a type 1 Enneagram is an idealist, a reformer, and above all else, someone who just sets insanely high standards of themselves. And while you might not consider yourself to be a perfectionist, it's definitely possible that you exhibit some perfectionist tendencies. And I probably know what you're thinking. Why would a perfectionist even be giving a TED Talk about the problems with perfection? And honestly, I don't even know that. But what I do know is that perfectionism is becoming more and more of a problem in our daily lives. Almost 30% of our population are estimated to be perfectionists. And that estimation also gave us a guess on the number of gifted students in high schools. And if you guys had to guess, that number might be somewhere higher. 40 to 50% maybe, 50 to 60% even. You know, these kids are working harder, and so they're setting these higher goals of themselves and higher standards in order to achieve those goals. And yet, you'd be wrong, because it's only 1%. Just kidding, it's 80%. I saw some of y'all were like, oh, 1%, how do they do that? No. In today's world, it's extremely common. And today I want to talk about the two main types of perfectionism. The first type is self-inflicted perfectionism. Self-inflicted perfectionism can be detrimental, but it's actually the least harmful of the two I'm about to talk about. That little voice inside your head telling you that the line you drew was too short or that the curve you drew is the wrong angle and then you're going to have to restart your entire project. But self-inflicted perfectionism can also include you being hard on yourself when it comes to results you don't like or comparing yourself to others. For me, growing up, it was pretty common for me to compare myself to tennis teammates, students, peers, pretty much anybody that outscored me on anything. And specifically, I remember freshman year being unable to make my high school tennis team and losing to a lot of better players. I went really hard on myself. I went to the tennis courts pretty much every single day. And on Friday nights at 10 p.m. when others might be playing League of Legends or Fortnite, I was by myself on the courts just hitting. This type is detrimental, but it's also very short term. Project to project, it varies. And although you might lose a lot of time rewriting your essay or redoing your project, it's something your mind can recover from, and something that you can learn to be less harsh on yourself with over time. The second type, however, is socially prescribed perfectionism. Socially prescribed perfectionism is much more unhealthy and often accounts for a larger chunk of the mental health issues described with perfectionism. Socially prescribed perfectionism entails how you feel disappointed that you don't meet someone else's definition of perfect or their standards of perfect. When we inevitably fail, we might get punished or mistreated. And as a result of that, we tend to blame ourselves and put the blame on ourselves. If we do somehow manage to accomplish or meet those tasks or goals, then their standards continue to get raised and more unreasonable. The sense of failure, helplessness, and one's inability to improve will continue. And along with it, their mental and emotional stress will continue to grow over time as well. Our school system is where we begin to see both types of negative perfectionism begin to be displayed in worried and stressed students across the world. High school can be a hyper-competitive environment where you're constantly worried about test scores, GPAs, college admissions. And you can have constant anxiety worrying about how other people are doing better than you at any given time. A recent NYU study showed that almost 50% of students, high school students, reported feeling a great deal of stress on a daily basis, with most of them citing test scores, GPAs, and homework as their greatest sources of stress in their lives. Along with that, socially prescribed perfectionism also takes root throughout our childhood. This is mainly because parents and even teachers begin to set extremely high standards of their students and kids. Now, obviously, this is somewhat justified, right? They want to see their child succeed. They want to see their child go into a good career field, succeed in that career field, and then eventually retire and settle down. But on the other hand, that much mental stress and emotional anguish can have really bad negative repercussions on a kid. I think it's okay as a parent to want the best for your child, but also try to empathize with them, understand what their limits and boundaries are, and adapt to them, not to go after their imperfections. In today's world where everyone knows everything about each other, it can be extremely easy to get caught up in how others appear and their results or accomplishments rather than our own. Our society has come such a far way from its previous days. Perfectionism is now a bare minimum rather than a rare feat, and we're much more quick to judge on those who are unable to accomplish this bare minimum. I still think that perfectionists are some of the most hardworking, dedicated, and compassionate people that I've met throughout my life. But I think it's high time that we show ourselves a good amount of well-needed self-empathy. How do we do that, though? I think the main idea is to give ourselves some breathing room. Go easy on yourself when it comes to making mistakes or producing worse results than your peers. And also to focus on your own growth rather than on other people. In the words of one wise, great philosopher, Baby Keem, in competition with myself, I cannot lose. And for those who notice, yes, I did just quote a rapper in my TED Talk. But also, don't sweat it when other people do better than you on tests or quizzes or anything. Don't focus on because there's nothing productive about focusing on other people at all. Also, focus on short-term growth when it comes to self-improvement. Focus on day-by-day or step-by-step goals even when it comes to improving yourself rather than the big picture. Like a plant, your daily improvements won't be very noticeable, but also like a plant, you'll grow up much more motivated and much more genuine. As for socially prescribed perfectionism, the only way to treat it is to cut it off at the source. You can try to remove all the plastic in the ocean, but until you do something about the plastic in our rivers, the incoming flow of trash and plastic will be too much for anyone to handle. Similarly, the only way to cut off socially prescribed perfectionism is for those who set those extremely high standards and expectations to ease up and empathize. Children these days are almost powerless to negate the standards and comparisons set for them. But as a parent, it's actually pretty simple to do. Just cut down on the meaningless comparisons and standards and replace it with much more meaningful worth. In all seriousness, as children and as students, we need to get better at appreciating ourselves and focusing on growing on our own terms. And as a society, we need to get better at appreciating our children, not going after their imperfections, and letting them grow up in a world where mental and emotional stress aren't a daily thing. I love you all so much. Thank you.